Hey guys, I want to give a quick shout out to the new sponsor, Dueling Guard. They have great mats, deck boxes, sleeves, everything you can think of for TCG apparel. Check them out in the description box down below and use code SAKO for 5% off. Hey guys, Lucas Sako here. Today we have a discussion video over what I think is absolutely the best card going to the next format, and that card is Metaltronus. Metaltronus is an absolutely insane card. It's a good board breaker. It's a good go first card, as well as it's just a generic card to help you play through hand traps. I'm going to read this card off to you just so there's no confusion in what it does. It says, target one face-up non-token monster your opponent controls. Special summon one monster from your hand deck or extra deck that has two or more of the same type, attribute, and or attack, but negate its effects, and if you do, negate the targeted monster's effects. Also, after that, if these monsters have the same name, you can optionally banish both face down. Your opponent cannot activate the targeted monster's effects in response to this card's activation, and you can only activate one Metaltronus per turn. So you may look at this card and say like, oh yeah, that must be really good for mirror matches, right? No, this card is great in mirror matches. However, I think this card actually stands out more just generically into the format. The number one way that I've seen people play around Nibiru in this current format is actually using two monsters to go into Caesar. So they'll link into Moon, and then they'll go into the Requiem summon Engraver, equip the Requiem, make a Necro equip, and then special back Engraver and make Caesar. That's something that I think a lot of decks are doing right now, and if you watch all of my combo videos as well as some other people, you'll see that it's splashable in just about every deck. So why is this card really good against Caesar? Don't you just summon your own Caesar and negate him? Yes and no. You do have the option of summoning your own Caesar and even banishing him face down. There's actually something you can do that's a little bit more value against him. So I'm just going to put a token over there on the opponent's field. We're going to assume this is like another boss monster. But we're going to go Metaltronus targeting the Caesar. And here we're going to summon out a Desiree. Both of these monsters are fiends that have 2800 attack. So that's how they're linking together. So we've now negated the Caesar. They couldn't even chain the Caesar to negate Metaltronus because of how good Metaltronus is. And now we have a Light Fiend. Now if you're playing a deck like Yugioh in this instance, you can now link away the Desiree into Requiem, use the Requiem effect, summon an Engraver, and then you can equip the Requiem onto the Engraver and use the Engraver effect to now send the other boss monster they have. So effectively off of one card, we've turned off two of the Caesar disruptions, we've removed the card from the opponent's field, and we've started ourselves with a line of play. So, I mean, that's obviously very plus to begin with, but it gets even better. In this instance, let's assume that our opponent has two boss monsters besides the Caesar, but we also have an Engraver to start with. So you start off your turn by activating Engraver. You get the track to your hand for the rest of the turn, right? We're not going to really use this track to combo. I'm just showing you guys what happens if you open access to a Light Fiend. But then we can go Metaltronus on the Caesar again, summoning out Desiree. So now we've turned off the Caesar again. We're going to do the same play where we link into the Requiem, which here we're actually going to be able to trigger the Desiree effect because we have a Light Fiend Engraver. So we're going to shuffle that back, then we're going to automatically send another one of the boss monsters. It could also be a spell trap, so if your opponent has like a set card that you think may be an Imperm, you can use Desiree here to send the Imperm before they could really interact with you. Now we can do the same thing that we did previously. We can go activate the Requiem effect, special out the Engraver from deck, equip the Requiem, and then use the Engraver to then send the Requiem and send the token. Here we have two Light Fiends in graveyard, so we could even like make some value plays to do something else and go into like a Desiree by having an extra body, or you can just use what the track provides, summoning out Lurie, and then being able to like link it to Yama, summon back the Engraver, putting back your Desiree, and then here you could even link into Sequence, and then use Sequence to fusion all things back into a Desiree. So off of these, like basically just a one card, you're able to break the full board, and then if you did have something like the track, you're able to start off the turn with more disruptions before you commit any other lines of play. I think this card is really good, not just in matchups where they're ending with Caesar though. I'm going to show you all the other variations and the decks where Metaltronus is effective. Alright, for Yugioh, here are the three main boss monsters that Metaltronus is very effective against with Yugioh. So we're going to go ahead and start off with activating Metaltronus. We're going to target their Phantom of Yugioh. Here we have a few different options. The best thing that I've found is that you can actually just summon your own spirit from deck. It's going to negate their Phantom, so that's really good for you. It's going to put a spirit on your field, which is really good in case you have something like a Squirmer or a Sharvar that you can destroy this with. And even if not, you're getting a body that you can link with. It's also a Yugioh name, so you can use it to fusion summon into your Phantom later in the turn. So that covers the Phantom of Yugioh. We're going to move on over to Soul of Rage. We're going to activate Metaltronus and target him now. The best thing that you can summon off of Soul of Rage is actually Engraver. Rage is a fiend monster with 1800 attack, and so is Engraver. So that's a really good point there. They activate the effect of Rage, you're able to negate it, and then summon your own line of play with the Engraver. You can do the same thing that we did in the other example, where you make Requiem and then try to send another boss monster, but here I'm just going to leave it with your turn off the Rage and get in the line of play. And then we had already talked about the Caesar. You're able to summon out the Desiree, and that is the best thing there. Moving on, we now have the Snake Eye matchup. So for the Snake Eye matchup, there's a few different points where you can Metal Tornus them. The main disruption that all of the Snake Eye boards are going to have next format is Flameverge IP. So we're going to assume that they use that effect, they link with the IP, and they go into SP. SP is really not hard to deal with at all, because you can just activate your own Metal Tornus and summon your own copy of SP here. I don't have room in the extra deck for this example, but you're just summoning your own copy of SP. It's going to turn off the first effect of SP to banish, but also they're not going to be able to chain the SP to dodge it. So you're basically blanking their IP effect without having to play a card that corresponds with IP, and you're getting your own boss monster on the field. Even if you're not going to be able to use the effect because it's negated, you can still use it as a Link 2 body to climb up into whatever you're wanting to do. Moving on, we have Azure. This is the card that most people are setting off of their Top Hat Hair or their Silhouette Rabbit. This card, really funny, has Light Attribute with 1800 attack, and it's a fairy. The best thing you can summon off of this is Engraver. It's going to negate the effect of Azure, as well as summoning out a line of play again. It's really funny how a lot of these cards are starting to connect back to Engraver to give you just better lines of play. And then, lastly, Caesar. Talked about this a million times. Boom, Desiree, we win the game. Alright, for Tenpai, you do have a few different points where you can Metal Tornus them. It's mostly going to be when you send them first or when they choose to go first against your deck. But here we have Seals. You can actually use the Metal Tornus on Seals itself and summon a few different options from your deck. You can either summon Effect Veiler or you can summon out Ghost Ogre because it is a light monster with 0 attack. Both of these monsters correspond with that. So you do have a few different options of hand traps that you could summon to check their seals. Let's say you're not as worried about the seals. Say you're playing something like Yugioh that has a lot of dark attributed monsters or light attributed monsters, and you're not as scared of the seals effect. What you are scared about is the Quackimiru Drago this is going to summon. So a lot of the time in Tenpai matchup, they'll go activate seals, tribute itself, new chain link, effective seals is going to summon out True Draco, or the Quackimiru Draco, and this card is really, really annoying to out. Funny enough, Metal Tornus has a really cool interaction with this. Because Seals actually makes the monster 0 attack and defense, you can use Metal Tornus on the Drago since it is a wind monster with 0 attack right now. We can actually summon Droll from our deck and then negate the Quackimiru Drago. And it's going to give us an extender in the form of Droll that we could use to link into a moon or the other half of sequence, whatever you're planning on doing with it. For the White Forest Runic deck, this card doesn't have too much implication. In the previous format, you used to be able to Metal Tornus on their Diabell, and that would let you summon Beatrice from your deck. It would negate their monster, give you a guy to play with, and that was really cool. There's not that many interactions now, but one key interaction that you should keep in mind is Baguska. This card is a really big problem to deal with in the current format, but Metal Tornus does take care of it pretty easily. You can use Metal Tornus targeting the Baguska. It is a fiend with 2100 attack, and so you're able to summon the Aerial Eater and turn it off. Aerial Eater is not just like a good card to deal with, it's also a level 6 fiend. So you're able to use that to make a Caesar, play around other things like the Diabell later in the turn, or the Trap card, or Nibiru, and things like that. This is really where the interactions for the White Forest does end. I really wouldn't side this card into White Forest, but I think if this card's in your main deck, it's really important to keep aware of the different interactions. I did want to mention that if you go first with this card, you can't always use this card like an Imperm. Everything in their deck is like a Light Fiend, so you're able, or a Light Spellcaster, so you're able to use Metal Tornus at any point and summon out Effect Veiler from your deck and negate their card. Running through a few rogue matchups, one key interaction against Sword Soul deck is that you can use Metal Tornus targeting their Chixiao, and you can summon out Desiree. That checks it as it is a light monster with 2800 attack. Moving on, you have the Ritual Beast deck. Ulti Gaia Pelio is the biggest problem versus that deck. Everything else is manageable with. If you look at what people are really starting to end with now, a lot of the boards are starting to revert back to playing Colossus, as it allows them to finally play around Nib better and go for Ulti Gaia Pelio. This card is really hard to deal with, as it is a not once per chain negate. The only restriction is that they have to have a Ritual Beast card in hand to banish in order to get that negate. However, it's not once per turn, so I mean, if you imperm this card, there's a good chance they negate it and they have like 2-3 more Ritual Beast cards, and it's pretty chalked from there. But since they can't respawn when you Metal Tornus it, you can actually summon Ghost Ogre from your deck here and then turn it off and not give them a chance to respawn. So like, this is dealing with the biggest part of their board, and you're getting a monster to play with going into the board, so that's really good. Ghost Ogre on that. And then lastly, for the Melodious matchup, this is another rogue deck. Funny enough, the Etoile is a light fiend, or a light fairy with 2800 attack, so you can also just summon Desiree here. With the Labyrinth matchup, you do have a lot of different options when playing Metal Tornus. This does obviously depend on what deck you're playing, but if you're playing Yubel, which is the main deck that I think people will be playing going into this format, and why people are watching my channel right now, Metal Tornus has so many options versus the Labyrinth deck. At any point, you could use it to special summon a spirit from your deck, and that would give you a lot of resources because you could then use the spirit to link with, destroy it, or you can just fusion with it later in your turn. The other option that you can make is actually Soul of Yama. Yama's really good here because it's going to give you the graveyard effect of it. So if you already have Sharvara in hand, Metal Turnusing out a Yama is absolutely insane. Or if you even have a Gruesome Gravestormer, being able to trigger the Yama early in your turn is really, really good, especially when you don't have to make 2 bodies and then put another body just to get the card in the graveyard. The last thing that's really good to Metal Turnus into this deck is Rage. Rage is a Dark Fiend, so you're able to go into it off of any of these monsters here, and Rage can be used as value for when you destroy it, so you can add back other lines of play, or even you can add back follow-up or other things that will disrupt them in that manner. This example here shows how you can actually use this card to play through hand traps really well. So in this example where we have the Metal Turnus and the Engraver, we're going to activate the Engraver. Engraver is then going to add us a Tract. We're going to activate Tract to add Lurry and then discard Lurry, and Lurry effect to special summon itself. From there, we can link away the Lurry into the Requiem, and then use the Requiem effect to then special summon out our Engraver. From here, we would usually activate the effect of Engraver to shuffle back a Lurry into our deck, and this is where we're going to get hand trapped. We're going to assume that our opponent activates a Yugioh and they banish our Engraver. How do you play from there? You just lost a lot of resources, you don't really know what to do. If you don't have any other extenders, it's kind of chalked here. Here's where Metal Turnus comes in handy. So you can Metal Turnus the Baldrake, and then actually summon out your own Yugioh monster. Just summoning out any monster here is really helpful because you get a monster to play with, but also if it's a Yugioh monster, summoning Druisworm and then linking with it is really value. So from here, you could link into a Druisworm, for example, trigger the Druisworm, get rid of the threat of Baldrake. So now you've cleared off their field, and you can still combo by using the sequence to fusion back your monsters and summon Aerial Eater, and then whatever deck you're playing from here, you can proceed to full combo. That should wrap up all the examples here that I wanted to show today with Metal Turnus. Has a lot of cool interactions here, as well as some that I just couldn't even mention because there's so many of them. I want to know what you guys personally think about this, so if you guys wouldn't mind telling me in the comment section down below, and if you guys wouldn't mind commenting, and subscribing. I did notice that a few of my subscribers don't have the notifications turned on, so if you guys wouldn't mind turning that on so you don't miss a video from me, I'd really appreciate it. Besides that, I hope that you just have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.